Hey everyone, it's TJ. I'm doing a video post for discussion board. I think, or it's the first discussion board, but it's for week 5. I'm going to click through. You'll probably hear me clicking on the computer um, to answer the questions, just so I can, yeah, look at the screen in both areas. So anyway, the first question says compare the messages you received from browsing the website on the false memory syndrome link and those in the film clip or film clips. So, as I'm sure everybody has gained from reading or checking out the website for the False Memory Syndrome Foundation, and then viewing the videos posted, a lot of what I gathered from the website was basically the attempts um, or the actual discrediting of memories, basically understanding that memories were not, that they needed to be substantiated in some fashion, and that you really can't believe anybody's past traumatic events or take them for their word because they could be inaccurate. Some of the stuff that they talked about is, or that could lead up to this false memories were, experiencing an event in our current lives, such as, divorce, death of a family, extreme stress, things like that. And that typically brings people in to see a psychotherapist or a therapist. But in that setting, what is happening currently isn't looked at, but rather some past traumatic event. So what it's saying is that a lot of therapists, they, instead of addressing what is going on in the current situation, is that they're trying to link it to some past traumatic event, and that's what causes the false memories to arise, supposedly. They gave a couple of definitions of what the syndrome is, and basically identified it primarily with sexual abuse, stating that it predominantly is sexual abuse is what arises. And then it gave some statistics as far as like how many people are affected when people falsely accuse others within the home, and I think it got up to anywhere from like 42 to 90 people can be impacted by a single accusation towards another person. When comparing that to the video, I actually thought it was quite interesting, the amount of the backlash and stuff that comes about. Basically identifying that as therapists, we do what we can to help our clients, rectify situations and or identify past events or current events that are happening in their lives, and how that is playing out through their actions and in the choices they make in their life. And so I just found it really interesting, the amount of kind of the backlash that was being, you know, occurring. The videos and the references from both seem to be fairly dated. I think the most recent reference I was able to find on the False Memory Syndrome Foundation link was 2014, but that was like one out of like a lot that they referenced. Almost everything else comes from the early 90s. I think there was even a couple from like the 80s, and then it went up to anywhere from like the 80s to late 90s, maybe a couple in the early 2000s, but outside of that, most of it seemed pretty dated. And so I would be interested to see what newer research has and why they're not using or relying on more updated research. Um, I don't know, I guess, how to really compare the false memory to the film clips outside of, on one side it's saying that we need to become more aware of um, basically our influence on our clients and how that can lead them to identify with certain memories. And so becoming more cognizant of that. In the videos, they gave examples of forensic interrogations or interrogation methods and a couple of other things. And so um, I guess just really becoming aware of how our language can impact clients' memories and how that could potentially lead to a false memory. But I guess as a therapist and moving more down to question 3 would be, and when working with a client, I don't, they, t- I think they talked about this in both the video and the website, but just so obviously as therapists, we want to take what our clients say as valid, but not to. I think we should also we should question them to some extent as far as like the validity of the situation. See what they can recall as far as who the person was, where the event might have happened, um, just to gain those a further understanding, ensuring that basically they know that it's reality or that it's something that did happen and that they're not, developing a false memory. I guess would be a way to go about it. So question 2, what role do you see mental health specialists play in deciding if a memory is real or false? And again, I think that kind of question 2 and 3 potentially play together or can go together as far as what role I have as far as identifying if a memory is real or not. I think ultimately that's not a decision I can make. That's a decision the client makes. I can't. I haven't lived their life, and I don't know what is real and what's not real. All I can do is base my judgments um, off of the information that I receive from the client, which is obviously going to be biased in some fashion because they're telling the story or the narrative from their perspective rather than from an objective standpoint of the entire situation. And then I liked what the guy said in the video. Obviously in Therapy 101, when a client tries to get our understanding or what do you think, you place that back onto the client, and it's like, well, I know what I think, but it's really what you decide, what you choose. So trying to take that outside of, I'm not placing my thoughts or judgments onto anyone in particular, but rather, or onto the client, but rather I'm allowing the client to develop their own thoughts and beliefs about it. And that's really how I think I would work with a client in that situation. The third one, how would you work with a client that said she was being falsely accused of sexual abuse based on the repressed memories coming to light years after the alleged abuse? I think that one would be difficult as far as on the other side of things, a client saying that they were accused. Again, I think my approach would be to basically let them get it out, using talk therapy to allow them to report and show where they're at with it, identifying their thoughts and feelings surrounding the situation, and what it is, what steps they can take to help in that situation. Obviously, again, trying to keep personal input out as far as like, whether or not they should take legal action or anything, or gain legal insight. I mean, that's not for me to say. So, really trying to just help them work through, what has happened, what the memories are, what they recall from any given situation, or from the situation in which they're being accused. So talking through that aspect of it. And then the last question: any other significant takeaways from the website and or films? So I thought it was really significant one of the takeaways I gained was that we need to be more diligent or I need to be more diligent in my work to continue. I know in social work we have CEUs that we have to obtain, but that's only 20 a year, and really does that keep us updated on everything and knowledgeable in how our field is changing. And they mentioned, becoming familiar with the interrogation process of the police, continuing to research and become familiar with the updated journals and practices and all of that. And so I think that would be the major takeaway for me, is to identify all these things that could potentially impact the therapeutic alliance, right? So how are my words impacting the client, and am I doing anything in a way that is influencing their thoughts or behaviors, and ultimately the outcomes that are coming from the therapy session. And so really being diligent in making sure that not only am I staying up to date on everything, but I'm proactive in it. And then the other part is obviously gaining the insurance needed to protect myself in case of an allegation occurs and people want to take legal action against my practice, or against me as a clinical social worker. And so gaining the needed coverage in order to protect myself, and then beginning the due diligence process of, as soon as something like this happens, I am becoming involved. I immediately reach out and start making those connections, and then limiting interactions with anybody that would be for the other side. And so I guess really just knowing that it's a possibility that something like this could occur. I think the one benefit that I gained from the website was that these allegations and subsequent, lawsuits have become less and less over the last several years. Again, the references are pretty old, so I don't know what those numbers are now, but hopefully just doing my part ahead of time and taking notes or taking good notes of each session, what was happening in the session, what therapies I used within the session, and justification for that would just help in all that. So I feel like I'm just kind of rambling on now, so that's my thought process. Anybody taking self-care will know that over this last week we did personality test, and mine basically said that I would do this. So anyway, that's another little tidbit from a different class that I thought I'd give everyone. That's all I have, so I'm going to post this. It's like 11:20 now, so hopefully I can get it uploaded to YouTube and the link shared. So see you later.